Hey, what's up? This is Udulena from Udulena Digital. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm talking about the male-female fallacy from Economic Facts and Fallacies by Thomas Sowell. Why I love this writer is because he always starts with the facts, nothing but the facts. And actually, when you begin this book, it starts with the following. Facts are stubborn things, and whatever may be our wishes, our inclinations, or the dictates of our passions, they cannot alter the state of facts and evidence. This is a quote from John Adams. What I really love about this book is that whatever he is trying to talk about, he never just talks about it in the air. He always brings in facts and research, as much as possible of research and statistics that he has found about each of these problems. And the funny thing is that he finds things that nobody talks about, and his books really open your eyes to a lot of things that get slightly bit hidden when it comes to our modern passionate discussions about equality. In my previous video I talked about the realities of being a woman in tech, and one of the reality actually which I mentioned was not that I feel in any way discriminated, but in a way I see that there is very few women who work in technical jobs in general. Women tend to focus more on sales, marketing, social media, advertising. I see very few women engineers, few women leaders compared to men. Of course, there are many more maybe than other companies, and I think Google has done a great job in bringing a lot of female talent, but in comparison it is still a minority compared to the rest of the positions occupied by men. And what I like to argue here is that this has nothing to do with discrimination against women. It has mostly to do with choices and ideas that women have taken over time and have been maybe taught to by their parents or grandparents. And this is exactly the confirmation that I got while reading this book. This came straight after this video, and I was like, wow, I should have read this book before. I knew, if I knew all these things, like I knew I was on the right way, but now I'm sure I'm on the right way. So let's dig into the history of the problem. So Thomas Sowell, that's why I love him so much, always starts with the root and the history of the problem. So the history of women in the labor force starts, let's say, when you talk about the agricultural times. Of course, families would play a big role in allowing or disallowing where daughters can work. And of course, they would not allow most of their daughters to work outside of the house. And they had a significant fear that daughters can go into sexual relationships, get pregnant, disgrace the family. And this was a very important thing at that time. And this could actually bring into a lot of necessary struggle and the full economic burden of raising a child without a father to the family. So this was a very strong fear, and this is why a lot of women in early times were not participating in labor. Also, a big important fact at that time was that labor was mainly physical, so women can only do so many jobs that they need so much physical labor. So that's why men would be preferred. With the advancement of factories, there was a huge demand for labor. And of course, women are half of the population, so you cannot exclude half of the population when you need so many hands to actually do the work. That's why factory owners started finding out different ways to attract more girls and women into working in factories, and including creating female-only factories where they would be chaperoned by older women in order to make their families feel safe. And over this time period, you would think that the position of women was, let's say, much worse compared to what we see during the 20th century. However, this is kind of the first shocker that Thomas Sowell brings here, and this is that when you look at the early 20th century, so the period of the early 20th century when we have scientists like Marie Curie, for example, who is a Nobel laureate, in the time when women, let's say, were most oppressed. And we see so many other PhDs and scientists over that time. Actually, what he finds out is that over the period between 1921 and 1930, 70% of the PhDs were earned by women. Well, you might say this is still a minority. However, if you compare this to the next period, which was, let's say, the late 1950s and early 60s, this percent has dropped to 10. So this is a result of a lot of things that happened in society after World War II, and the position of women decided to take, or maybe was imposed to them by some encouragement from families. Remember that these were times when a lot of men had died in the war, and people were starting families. There was the baby boom. A lot of children were born, and women would get married early on, which proves the first fact, and this is very important when we look at the equality and distribution of women in highly paid position, is of course the earlier they start a family and have children, the more difficult it is for them to get to actually a high paying position. The reason is that there is lack of continuity. Even if they had started a job early on and they are maybe earning equally with their male counterparts, breaking down for a few years, maybe 4 or 5 years, and coming back to the job market would lead them with lack of experience. So they would be 5 years less experience, and therefore they would work into a lower paid position, maybe more junior role. Of course, over time this accumulates, plus the assumed domestic responsibilities that a woman with children has. So the fact that they have grown up to 5 doesn't mean that they stop existing. So she's still working and also looking after them, which accumulate into big differences between what women are paid and what men are paid, even though that they are in different positions. So that's the most important part to see here, is that men who are in high positions are high paid, and women who are in high positions are high paid, but there is much less women in high positions than men, because most women actually take some time to look after their family. They would prefer more flexible jobs. Maybe some of them would work part-time. Maybe they would choose also occupations from the beginning that are good for them, so that they can have a family. Actually, when we look into the traditional family, where the woman is a housekeeper and the man is the bread earner, even though the paycheck comes on the name of the man, the woman is part of the enterprise. It is a joint enterprise, and surveys have been done of married men that they would earn and out-earn bachelors. And this is, you can argue that this is precisely because of all the chores and work and things that the woman is doing in the background. So let's say a woman would sacrifice, maybe go into a region which is most useful for the man. Maybe they can get a better job there, but not necessarily that she can get a better job there. However, the fact that he has high career prospects and can earn more there is good for the entire family. But there is the argument here that if the divorce happened, this whole investment that's done by the woman is lost, because she has lost the time and experience, whereas the man has got a significant CV after that time, and he can easily continue growing in their career. So they're the economical factors that make into this gap and these differences between men and women. From the 70s onwards, there is a steep change, that there's more women taking degrees, there are more women choosing and maybe going into degrees where they have better prospects to work in a highly paid position. So technology is one of these places. When we look at scientists in Russia, 40% in recent studies, 40% of inventors and scientists in Russia are women, which is astonishing, as when we look at the rules and law system of Russia specifically, there are some discriminatory laws, like there is no laws against domestic violence, for example. How come still that there are so many women that are scientists and inventors? And I think here it has to do a lot with the mentality that has been done and during the communism, where women were encouraged to do both, to be a homeowner, to look after children, but also to invest in their career over time. Another important factor in order to have this desired equality, if we want to have more women in the workforce, is the fact that they would require more flexibility. With the highest paying jobs that we look at, these are always positions which require a tremendous amount of work and stress. And it is fair that a lot of women decide to save themselves this stress, even if they don't have a family. A recent study shows that a lot of women kind of stop stretching themselves and stop pushing for further and further positions at some point, because they decide to focus more on their well-being. And this is regardless whether they have a family and children or not. Maybe they would just don't want to deal with all this stress, whereas men are maybe kind of primed a little bit since childhood that they have to be the earner, they have to make a lot of money, they have to raise to the top. It might be just a mentality issue. But in any case, if you have the opportunity, and there's an equal opportunity to work 75 hours a week, earn a lot of money, but also look after children, the fact that not many women take this opportunity should not be surprising, because it's very difficult. When you read also a book called Lean In by Cheryl Sandberg, she was CEO of Google, now CEO of Facebook, fantastic woman. She talks a lot about this topic. And you can see that actually what is important first, she had a lot of help, actually we had domestic help and maids and nannies, etc. And second, she would have a lot of flexibility at her workplace. So she would be allowed to go home early, and then once the children are sleeping, she would go and pull all-nighter working on her stuff, even taking calls, doing notes, writing, working until late. So not every woman is ready to do this sacrifice, but it seems that this is what it takes in order to have this equal spread of payment and of incomes between men and women. Another important point, which I touched in my previous video, is the fact of degrees and career choices made by women. Here, Thomas Sowell also mentions that in a recent study, 60% of the PhDs in education are earned by women, but 20% of the PhDs in engineering are earned by women. When we look at also data of recent breakdown of STEM subjects, science, technology, and engineering in the UK, you can see that the same trend, science and engineering, you see about 20% of women actually going into this as bachelor degree. So these are the jobs of the future, right? These are technology jobs, these are software engineering, this is going to be the very highest paid jobs. And as a lot of women at the moment find themselves in the position where they don't have a man to earn the income, like they are not housewives as well, shying away from these parts of technology and of economy is actually taking them into an undesirable route when it comes to their economical future. Now, one would argue that even if, let's say, they don't have a family, but they focus their whole career on a low-paid job like nursing or teaching, of course they will not end up very high up on the payment buckets. And importantly here to mention is that women are in their own choice. If something, there might be factors that we don't know that a lot of women take into consideration, including stress levels, well-beings, family, might be not directly their family, maybe looking after parents or older members of their family. So we cannot decide for them. And when we only focus on the statistics and how many women are CEOs and how many women are in high-paid position, what we see is the discrepancies, but we don't see the underlying stones and underlying decisions that brought them to these statistics. This is all from me for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back next week with another video based on this book. And this we'll talk about the academia and fallacies, so universities and university fees. I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a great weekend.